Yeah, it's working.
How do you know, Jen?
And the top it says Liz is recording.
Oh, right. Yes, that's so you know, isn't it? Oh, that's good. We'll try it for a bit, and then we'll see what the quality is like.
Okay.
So, what should we do then? Should we? I mean, I've added to the list of things that's on the website, as you might have seen.
Yeah.
And it's not. I don't think it's feasible to try and talk about them, all of them, and all of them, and all of them all at once. So maybe we should just start with the things that we've been communicating about, like about time and feeling that your mind is doing some weird thing of its own.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I thought of right away was like Walter Benjamin and like empty homogeneous time, and like how we're kind of, I don't know if you'd say, kind of in a way step back from it or something, because people talk about not knowing what day it is now, and which, I mean, academics, it's more
I think you're used to it.
Yeah, we're a little bit more used to it, but like you hear it. And a thing that makes me think too is relating to something else is my mom's best friend described it in a way, like, because she was talking about, because she's like my mother, they both grew up on a farm.
Yeah.
And how it was more like a self-contained, and you had like your own time on the farm, and like things move slower and all that. And then, like, you know, as they integrated more into the modern world, they could see that and went back to that, like how it was different. And then now how it's kind of reverted back in a way.
You use this very posh thing from Walter Benjamin, empty homogeneous. Does he talk like that all the time?
Yes, he does.
Oh my God, shut up. So whereabouts in Benjamin does that come from? I've not come across that.
It's in Illuminations, but Benedict Anderson uses it in Imagined Community.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Shows you how thoroughly I read that.
And that's like, I think he expands on it a lot more, and like brings it. He uses the concept to like talk a lot about like, because, you know, each town in America, and I'm assuming here too, like had its own clock that everybody went off of, and that was the time in the town. But when the trains came through, they had to like synthesize that all together so that they forced, and that's where you get like,
yes,
say across America, like where everything was linked up that way, the trains would run on time.
Well, it's the same in Britain. There were about 35 different time zones, and the train would go backwards and forwards in time as it moved up the country.
Yeah.
Is that how you experience it, Jen? I mean, it's not how I don't experience it as empty homogenized time, although I have problems with what's happening. But
well, Derek and I talked about it a little bit like the other day, and I said, you know, when we moved here, so I was working an 8 to 5 job, like the normal stuff, and I've usually always had the schedule like that.
Yeah.
And then when we moved here and I went like self-employment and all of that, then it was a real struggle. So going from that to what I'm witnessing now, I'm more prepared for it because I've been doing it for 2 or 3 years. Like I set my own schedule, and I kind of have my own times, and I make my own meetings. Whereas like before, it was really regulated. And I told Derek, you know, I felt like I was I felt like I was more productive, even though I wasn't. If that makes sense.
Now, you mean now?
No, in the past.
Oh,
when I had to be somewhere from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Like I felt like I was doing something when really probably I wasn't doing as much as I thought I was.
But you had a purpose that you could name.
Yes. And then I would I realized when I was here, I kept telling Derek, like, I haven't done anything. And I have. Like I have done a lot. I've set up an exam. I built an online exam with a school and everything like that. So I have done things, but it still doesn't feel like I have.
I think a lot of that's kind of like this idea of relational, like, because when before she was in an office, there was lots of people that kind of conferred on her that you're doing this, you're doing that, you're doing that. And now she's got essentially
you're only telling yourself,
maybe me a little bit, maybe the guy that she works with a little bit, but there's not like a whole collection of people.
Right. Supporting each other.
Well, I don't experience it either as empty, homogeneous time or in the way that you do.
Yeah.
I seem to have lots of small purposes. You know, I have to do this and I want to do that and I need to do that.
Mm.
And I seem to be doing things all the time. But I still have this sense of I haven't done anything.
Mm.
So I have all the small purposes, but they don't seem to add up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand that feeling.
It's hard to attach to meaning, I guess, like to
your daily activities. I mean, when you're trying to find purpose in stuff that you do every day as well, or even like hobbies or gardening or something like that, like it doesn't seem purposeful.
Well, yeah.
When we were talking about this in the staff meeting last week, some of the people there who've got very small children basically looked at me saying this as though I was mad. and at that point, and she didn't pay the child, but a child kind of erupted in front of the computer, demanded time and attention, turned everything upside down, and then rushed off.
Yeah.
And she was saying her time is filled all the time. There are always demands, there are always requirements, but it becomes completely fragmented. You can't concentrate.
I thought something interesting.
The ability to concentrate, and I do seem to concentrate. It's just it doesn't seem to add up. I feel every day I'm emailing people, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, but it doesn't feel like with exactly what you said, Jen. It doesn't feel like I've done anything.
Yeah.
And I've never felt that before.
Yeah, they like I thought it was interesting. One of our friends that has a kid has just recently invented, I don't know if it's the times or if like it's just that age stage, but she invented an imaginary friend. And this made me think like, like she it's just, she's not getting, because before she was going to daycare, the kid was going to daycare every day, seeing all these other children, all these other things. And now she has a 5-year-old imaginary.
How sensible.
Yeah.
Well, she has to fill her time as well.
Yes.
I have spoken to so many people as well over the past 7 weeks. Like we've talked more to friends and family than we have in probably years, like at a distance. We've lived abroad for a while, but now it's like constantly we're calling people, talking to people a lot more.
How are your dreams?
I had this really, really freaky dream. Did I tell you about the one where the crocodile was cutting my toes off?
No. It's like an anomaly right now. People are having these.
Well, I mean, there's lockdown hair, and I could do with like having a lot of it chopped off. But my toenails need cutting, and I tend, when I'm hot, I tend to have nightmares. And I had this thing that was a dream but turned into a nightmare, where I was seeing a chiropodist who was cutting my toenails, but she was insisting on cutting my toes off. And I was saying to her, please don't do that. I have to learn to walk again. I don't want to have to learn to walk again.
But
yeah, I'm having nightmares.
Yeah. She's having more than I do. I don't remember my dreams so much, but I still had some weird ones. But
it was a very hot day, and I had a duvet on, so.
Yeah,
that time is interesting, isn't it? Because like everybody's sense of time seems to be up the creek, but the ways in which it's odd are different for different people.
Yeah. Well, these ideas of dreams and all this, like, because what I've been doing is writing this novella, and then like it's also like this fascination with plague literature right now. Like I forget something like
something cheerful then. Something cheerful.
Yeah.
The plague.
Yeah, and not just that, like all kinds of things. Like, did you hear Boris Johnson's father wants to issue, he has a book on, like, a past book on the plague. I had no idea, on some plague or something. Anyway, like, this idea, like, because I've been reading a lot about, like, how sociologically, like, there's a really good book I just finished on, like, social reality, and, like, how literature plays into it, and, like, how we make sense. We use essentially narrative to, like, organize what the experience going on around us. And, like, you could see that with the plague literature, because it's like, oh, these people are going through this experience, this existence. Well, I heard it's not actually reality that a novel represents existence. And it's so, like, there's this existence that somebody's going through, and you can kind of, like, because the world's so crazy right now, and it's so out of normal experience, that it's kind of hard to make sense of it. And it's a way, by reading these.
I've never been able to take Camus very seriously. Not once I counted how many women featured in The Plague.
True.
I've done that. There's one, I think, and the absent wife, who never appears.
Yeah.
Can you? Is there anybody else who, you know, you mentioned Benjamin, and we've talked a bit about Camus, and I suppose recur and narrative pops in the door.
Yeah.
But I wonder who was writing in the 1918-20 pandemic in sociology, who was taking any notice of it, or?
Well, I just thought of.
Yeah,
I mean, well, they said, you know, it's not, well, because now I think, like, how novelists capture this stuff very well. Like, Woolf, of course, was writing. Like, there's something that she writes. I forget what
she does mention it. Yes.
Yeah, but you don't really know it unless you, because how she's mentioning it, unless you, like, go back and, like, look when she wrote it and all this other stuff.
The same with Jacob's Room, isn't it? You have to know about the First World War in order to know. The thing that is never spoken of is that he was killed in the war.
I was just reading something the other day about, like, people that have written about, and I forgot. It skipped my mind.
Yeah, maybe sociologists of the day were all too busy doing practical research about it and didn't have time to sort of sit down and think reflectively about what was going on.
Yeah.
Be interesting to try and find out what appeared in journals at the time and if anybody was writing about it.
Well, it's strange because, you know, I just finished The Polish Peasant, and it ends essentially right before the pandemic, and so it mentions a lot about the war and how much the war changed everything, but doesn't really mention that.
I'm going to turn off the record now because I think we've probably